Master of Ceremonies, if you would allow me to simply affirm the protocols already recognized and to say to my comrades all, good evening. I am honored to have been asked to speak to you here this evening. It is with some trepidation because I thought I would have been closing out the batting on Sunday morning. But like if Joel Garner was asked to open instead of Desmond Haynes, here I am, and just allow me to do my best. But I believe that my speaking here tonight is the work of the Spirit, that the divine is trying to reinsert himself into the politics of Barbados, starting with the Democratic Labour Party. Before I get into my substantive address, which focuses on the essential characteristics of effective leaders, allow me first to speak to you as a comrade and a citizen, briefly yet frankly, on a few related matters. First, allow me to congratulate the Diocese of Barbados, my church, and I had hoped that Cannon-Burke was going to be here on its bicentenary. Its 200-year anniversary, which is a major milestone. And I pray that the Diocese of Barbados and all churches will continue to pass them meaningfully to our nation. But I want to use this opportunity as well to caution those across the political divide whose relationship with religion is akin to a mongoose and a fowl coop, not to use matters of faith opportunistically for political gain. Those with ears, let them hear. But more importantly, to my second brief point, the fabric of any democracy is fragile because it depends on the will of its citizens, us, to protect it. And if we become scared, when it becomes dangerous for us to defend our democracy, democracy can give way to autocracy, as recently happened in Bangladesh, but we are aware of the local cries against despotism. I thought, honestly, that social commentary in Barbados had died, because for the last 5 years, I could not hear any criticisms of the government of the day. But I was surprised and somewhat reassured when I heard the song Cross the Floor. So I asked a friend of mine who is a Calypsonian, and he explained their reticence. He said they are not willing to lose their pick to end up disqualified like Praise Academy of Dance. We have to be willing to defend our democracy. And I say that to come to what is our business. That an opposition party, the Democratic Labour Party, is the primary means by which democracies temper any regime's lust for political power or abuse of office. And we, as the opposition party, need to do better. For as a significant voice in this country once said, 30 love is not 100%. My father used to say to me, don't believe everything you hear. Don't trust everything you read. They make it seem like what is going on in the Democratic Labour Party is a crisis for democracy in Barbados. But we know different. We are sorting out our own business. And the reality is, when the Barbados Labour Party had two MPs suing each other in the court of law, that was not a threat to democracy. When the Barbados Labour Party expelled an MP and a former Prime Minister, somehow that was not a threat to democracy. When I was a boy at school, I used to like wrestling. I don't know if any of y'all here used to like it. They used to have Invader 1 and 2, Carlitos Colon, a brutish fella called Abdullah the Butcher. Y'all know that they had WrestleMania in Granny Adams' house, that MPs had each other neck lock off, body slam, one run up Roll-Out Street hollering for murder. And that was not seen to be a threat to democracy. We are dealing with a reality in the government that if the wrong person drops down, it is going to be civil war. And nobody says that is a threat to democracy. So I say to all of those out there, especially across the political divide, as the director said, neighbor, 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 let me alone. Mind your business, not we own. The Democratic Labour Party has not just been a beacon of democracy in this country, but the major instrument of social transformation. Because the reality is, political democracy is meaningless unless it is rooted in principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity, and accompanied by meaningful change to improve the lives of ordinary people. And it was often said that the Right Excellent Era Walton Barrow found Barbados a collection of villages and transformed us into a proud nation. As somebody said earlier, a nation where success no longer was to be determined by the color of one's skin, but by the depth of one's capacity and the strength of one's character. Matter day done. So in honoring this tradition of excellence, I urge anyone in our beloved party who may have a myopic view of history or this institution to refocus from the narrow confines of George Street and revision yourself as the crucial partner in Barbados' future as the DLP was ordained to be. I appreciate that some people feel uncertain after the last two election outcomes, and also the internal disputes. But as Winston Churchill opined, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. And I like to emphasize in my pastoral work, when people in relationships are under pressure, recovery often starts at the darkest moment. And Romans 5 tells us to rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured out into our hearts. So the thing about failure, as they call it, is not the falling down, it is the staying down. So as my speakers before said, it is time for us to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and move forward, onward, and upward. Our conference chairman alluded to it. Next year, our beloved party turns 70. Our Platinum Jubilee, which is a momentous occasion. 70 is a sacred number. It is made up of two perfect numbers, 7 representing perfection and 10 representing completion. So we are called to look ahead and to use this milestone to refine our vision and mission, reminding people who we are, what we stand for, and most importantly, where we are going. You know, democracy is not a spectator sport. It is a participatory event, so it has to be all hands on deck. And so we need to get our leadership intact. We need to get our candidates in place. We need to get our messaging coordinated to let the people of Barbados know we are ready to be the next government. And so my final introductory point is this. I know a lot of y'all go to church regular. Matthew 12:25 and Mark 3:25 make the same point. A house divided cannot stand. A house divided cannot stand. We are called to be a single body, and not just in faith. As we are told in the Bible, if one member suffers, all suffer with him. So when we fail as a political institution, the entire nation suffers because there is no one else out there to safeguard their interests. So instead of fighting amongst ourselves, we need to prepare for battle on behalf of the people of Barbados. So we need to move forward from here onto a path where sorrow that some are experiencing now is transformed into joy. And that healing, which takes courage, calls us now of necessity to dig deep within ourselves and find the resolve that is needed in order to move this party forward on behalf of the people of Barbados. We don't need to get into who did what, why, and when, but let us recognize that mistakes were made on all sides because the error is human, and as a consequence, we all fall short of the glory. And noting the pattern of the prodigal, rebellion, ruin, repentance, reconciliation, and restoration, let us seek to forgive past wrongs as a crucial step to reconciliation and restore our role, the role of this party as a builder of Barbados. Sorry, that was just a warm-up. Alongside the great hymns, there is nothing that stirs my soul like our national anthem. As a person of faith, I am reassured by the fact that we have written, "The Lord has been the people's guide for the past 300 years. With him still on the people's side, we have no doubts or fears." And what abundant blessings the Creator has bestowed on us for our faithfulness, the peace and stability through our history, great forebearers and outstanding leaders, particularly Errol Barrow, from whom we inherited transformational social policies like free education and healthcare, national insurance, and unsurpassed economic strategies like tourism and international financial services. But the abundance of those blessings isn't simply for us to live in individual comfort. It is his provision to us to help each other, and God entrusts us and our leaders with his favor, not to build a kingdom for ourselves on earth, but to inaugurate his kingdom, a kingdom of godly and brotherly love. There are times, I know, in many people's lives, especially during a time of crisis, when people feel abandoned by God. But often I have found it is that they have abandoned our one true God. That too many people today turn to worship the false gods of power and money and pleasure and fame and individualism and materialism. And while these pursuits result in satisfaction in the short term, they ultimately put our soul and the soul of our nation in peril. Because as we know, one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. Consider where we are. Consider where we are as a country. The national insurance scheme, the people's financial safety net, was scalped. People talk about a haircut. That was a scalping. It is a scalping because it is now deemed to be insolvent, thereby robbing the people of Barbados of the security they invested in their old age. And people walk about talking about this government cares. The incompetence in education is denying our children the opportunities for social mobility that Barrow envisioned. They have not just traumatized the students of Springer Memorial School, they have terrorized the entire school system. And they talk about this government cares. Crime and violence, as prophesied by our late leader David Thompson, is now the order of the day due to eroding core values and a failure by this regime to keep illicit activities and actors out of politics. Those responsible for leading our young people astray need to be prosecuted, not invited to state functions. And they say this government cares. Due to a lack of confidence in the healthcare, people tell me now they go for medical treatment with the credit card in one hand and the Bible in the next, because they don't know if the treatment can cost them all their savings or cost them their life. And this government says it cares. Our failings in tourism, our primary sector, is because some of the least capable people have been put in charge of it. In the last 5 years, our neighbors who are latecomers to tourism have been outperforming Barbados in leaps and bounds. And this government says it cares. This government, this motley crew does not care, it scares. It scares because the legacy of Errol Barrow is being systematically dismantled, starting with independence. They tried to get rid of Independence Day, talking about Republic Day. This is their agenda. And what is more tragic is that the people of Barbados feel they have no choice. They have to accept whatever is vomited up to them because we are not doing our job. And for all of y'all who've been listening to the DNC in Chicago this week, to quote Michelle Obama, hope needs to make a comeback. We need to bring Barbados back to the cusp of a brighter day, a chance to vanquish the demons of fear and division that permeate our nation out of the government. So I want to talk about, as we focus on the theme of our conference, on rebuilding and embracing and empowering, I want to talk about what it means to be a true and able leader. In Exodus chapter 18, we are told that the first institution of government was about Moses exercising all executive power by himself. And as you could imagine, he was overwhelmed. But then we are told his father-in-law Jethro comes to visit, and he advises Moses to appoint people to help bear the burden with him. And he makes these recommendations of the characteristics of a leader. He says, find individuals amongst the people who are able, who fear God, who are trustworthy, and who hate covetousness or dishonest gain. And complying with that divine imperative, Moses went out to the people and told them to find leaders. I know some of y'all didn't realize that democracy was divinely ordained. Moses told the people, get leaders, and if they have these characteristics, he will confirm them as their leaders. So what are we looking for? Leaders who are able. Ambition notwithstanding, not everyone has the competency to be an effective leader. And that is nobody's fault. God bestows on us different gifts, different talents and abilities. And we have to discern what are those talents and gifts he has given to us. An able leader is someone who possesses an understanding of the role and function of government. Someone who understands the rights of citizens and the importance of civil liberty. They have to have a passion for service, an understanding of the people they serve, and readily engage and guide the citizenry. Able leaders need to be persons of courage who will not shrink into despondency at the sight of difficulties or desert their duty at the approach of danger. Further, we are told that able leaders should be capable of enduring the burden of government, which is not easy and can easily fatigue the mind, body, and spirit, as many of those here who have served at the highest level will know. They also have to avoid being corrupted by pleasures or greed or gluttony, because government is a great burden of weight, and therefore weak and unworthy people will not be fit to lead. And so we must find people who are able. And then we are told, find leaders who fear God. And the understanding of this is that the fear of God is not intended to be a servile, superstitious dread of some arbitrary or cruel dictator, those we have amongst us, but rather it is reverence to a creator who is a lover of holiness and a hater of vice. And it's important to understand that virtue is a necessary characteristic of a good leader. Because an ungodly leader who has a sense of honor or natural benevolence can be virtuous, but there is a challenge. Think about this. Suppose you have an ungodly leader who is in a situation where their unpopularity or hardship will be the certain consequence of them acting virtuously. Can we expect them that they will adhere to their sense of duty? Are they willing to sacrifice everything dear in the cause of virtue when there is no expectation of earthly reward? And as we are expected to love ourselves and all of us wish to be happy, why should we expect someone to go against their nature if they have no faith and therefore no expectation that God is going to reward their virtue? It is easy to try to find a shortcut around suffering and misery because this will be acting in their self-interest, which is often too powerful to be ignored. Virtue is necessary to help us stay on the straight and narrow, to do not what is popular, not what is easy, but what is necessary and called on by God to serve Him in righteousness and serve the people of this country faithfully. So we must find leaders who fear God. And then we are told to find leaders who are trustworthy. And trustworthy means free from deceit or hypocrisy, guile or falsehood. And trustworthy leaders are individuals who will not use flattery or cajoling, falsehood or slander to get into positions of authority. They will not promise to anyone what they have reason to think they cannot or do not intend to perform. You see, this is important because in any oath of office, leaders bind themselves to faithfully discharge their duty. And a trustworthy person pays sacred regard to this pledge. And they are not content with receiving honors or emoluments of office when neglecting the duties of it. We need to have persons of trust. And although Machiavelli dictates different actions, what we want to do is secure a future not just for ourselves, not just for our political expediency, but that which is in the interest of the people of Barbados and consistent with the values of this party. And finally, we are told to find leaders who hate covetousness, which is, as you know, the excess desire for riches, which people, if they have it, will pursue by unlawful, immoral, or unethical means. And this aversion to covetousness for our political leaders is crucial to avoid what is a primary source of corruption. Timothy tells you, those who want to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into destruction and perdition. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And the reality is, much of the oppression, fraud, and violence that takes place around us can be attributed to covetousness. People wanting to get something fast, large, and as easy as possible. But we need to have leaders who avoid that in their public lives so that they are not willing to accept bribes or put their office on sale or on hire purchase to the highest bidder. We need people who will hate dishonest gain. So I'm going to conclude because it's long and I know we want to get on. We the people cannot uphold democracy or secure good government or guarantee the public well-being if we disregard the characters of those we appoint. A dunce or a joker, an extravagant or greedy person will not make a good leader just because they are elected by the people. To make right use of the democratic process, due attention must be paid by us in the ability and the moral character of those who present themselves to us. And Errol Barrow's investment in education was predicated on his understanding that democracy cannot succeed unless those who choose can choose wisely. And so the real safeguard for democracy is education. So we hear Jethro's advice to finding leaders who are able, fear God, trustworthy, and hate covetousness is important to us in Barbados because we see that our country is being consumed by hedonistic diversions, showy luxury, wanton extravagances, and all kinds of vanities. And this bodes ill both for the public good and the national well-being. And so we need now to work as a party to hold on to our core values, to ignore or step beyond the false gods that our world worships today. Power and money and pleasure and fame and ego and pride. And although they are profoundly influential, we are called to love God and country first and foremost, and turn our backs on the false gods and give our devotion to a God who integrates the whole of life, to a God in whom we live and move and in whom we have our being. We are called to give our fidelity, our fealty to a God who has been our help in ages past and our hope for years to come, our shelter from the stormy blast and our eternal home. My brothers and sisters, my comrades, may God continue to bless Barbados, to guide and strengthen this institution so that we can be His servant and serve our sisters and brothers with honesty and integrity. I thank you.